The Galactic Overlords had ruled the stars for millennia. Their empire stretched across countless star systems, each one brought under their control with ruthless precision. These alien species were the universe's apex predators, powerful, technologically advanced, and utterly unchallenged. Other civilizations had risen and fallen before them, their worlds burnt to cinders or enslaved in the wake of the Overlords' might. The Overlords were not just conquerors, they were worshipped as gods. Their ships, vast and imposing, filled the skies of conquered worlds, casting shadows that darkened entire continents. Their technology was so advanced that it seemed like magic to the civilizations they subjugated. No one dared defy them, for to do so meant instant annihilation. Whole planets had vanished in the blink of an eye, reduced to rubble by the might of their weaponry. And then there was Earth, a tiny, insignificant planet nestled in a backwater star system. From the perspective of the Overlords, it was a curiosity at best. The humans had barely mastered space travel, their science still primitive compared to the Overlords' technological wonders. They had no fleet, no grand weapons, and no armies capable of challenging the Overlords. In fact, the Overlords had never even considered the humans a serious threat. Earth had remained unremarkable in their eyes, a planet of squabbling nations, struggling to overcome their own self-inflicted problems. It was a relic of an outdated species, one with no place in the Overlords' grand design. But what the Overlords didn't realize was that Earth had been quietly watching. In the depths of their unassuming world, humans had begun to develop something that would change everything. A spark of innovation, an unyielding desire to survive against all odds. And that spark, though small, was about to ignite. The Overlords had sent a delegation, a grand envoy to Earth, thinking they would encounter an easy victory. Their goal was simple: convince humanity to bend the knee and join their empire. If the humans refused, they would be wiped out without hesitation, their planet's resources harvested for the benefit of the Overlords' vast civilization. As the massive Overlord ships descended into Earth's atmosphere, they loomed like gods of ancient myth, their sleek, terrifying forms casting an oppressive shadow over the planet. Cities trembled beneath their weight, and the people of Earth stood frozen, unsure of what to expect. The Overlords' delegation, led by their most formidable representatives, set down in the heart of New York, one of Earth's most powerful cities. The human leaders were summoned to meet them, though they were already aware that the stakes were high. The delegation's entrance was nothing short of awe-inspiring, an imposing, grandiose display of power meant to instill fear. As they exited their craft, the Overlords stood tall and proud, their eyes filled with disdain for the fragile, insignificant humans before them. They didn't speak immediately. Instead, they allowed their presence to sink in, watching the humans' fear take shape. They had seen this reaction before in countless species. It was always the same: awe, submission, and then the inevitable surrender. The Overlord's leader, a towering being with scales that shimmered like molten gold, spoke first. "You stand before the rulers of the galaxy." His voice echoed, deep and booming. "Your world is nothing more than a speck in the vastness of the cosmos. You will submit, or we will erase your existence. Your choice is simple." The human leaders stood their ground, maintaining a fragile calm despite the weight of the moment. They knew they had no fleet, no superweapons, and no real chance of defeating the Overlords directly. But what the Overlords failed to understand was that humanity had something far more dangerous than weapons: a relentless will to survive. One of the human diplomats, a seasoned leader named John Riker, took a deep breath before responding. "We will not bow to you. Earth will remain free, no matter the cost." The Overlord's leader sneered. "You misunderstand, human. You have no choice. You will serve us. The galaxy has already decided your fate." His tone was dripping with condescension, his confidence unshakable. The humans were already defeated in his mind, and soon the rest of the galaxy would follow suit. But Riker stood tall, his eyes burning with a quiet fire. "We don't need your approval. We're not your slaves. And if you come for us, you'll regret it." The Overlord's laughter rang out, a cold, mocking sound that filled the air. "You are amusing, human. We will give you one chance to reconsider. We'll return in 3 days to hear your answer. Choose wisely." With that, they turned and boarded their ships, leaving Earth's leaders standing in the shadows of their overwhelming power. The countdown to humanity's survival had begun. And as the Overlords departed, one thought lingered in the air: this would not be the end. The Overlord's ships loomed in Earth's sky like harbingers of doom. Their metallic hulls gleamed ominously as they hovered above major cities, casting enormous shadows over the land. From the ground, people stared up in fear and awe, helpless against the might of the alien invaders. The news spread quickly. Humanity was now at the mercy of the Overlords. Fear gripped the world, and the question on everyone's mind was simple: would Earth survive? The world's leaders convened in a global summit, a desperate attempt to find a solution. The United Nations, now a shadow of its former power, called upon military leaders, scientists, and strategists from every nation. The fate of humanity was at stake, but no one knew how to fight back. The Overlords had made their position clear: submit or die. The most advanced weaponry the world possessed would be nothing more than a scrap of metal against the Overlords' fleets. "We have 3 days," President Sarah Matthews said, her voice cold but resolute as she stood before the assembly. "We can't wait for reinforcements from the stars. We have no allies in this fight. We are on our own." She paused, letting the weight of the situation sink in. "But humanity has survived worse. We're not giving up without a fight." As the room fell into tense silence, the world leaders exchanged uneasy glances. No one had a solution. What could they do? The human military had nothing that could stand against the might of the Overlord's fleet. Nuclear weapons were off the table. The Overlords had demonstrated the ability to disarm entire planets without a single shot fired. And even if Earth launched a preemptive strike, it would only bring destruction upon them faster. In the midst of this growing sense of hopelessness, a quiet voice broke through the tension. "There's something we can do." Dr. Emily Harper, a brilliant scientist from the private sector, spoke up. She had been working in secret for months, collaborating with engineers and military personnel who shared her belief that humanity's survival depended on one thing: ingenuity. "We've been developing something that could change everything." All eyes turned toward her. She had always been regarded as a visionary, but her ideas had often seemed too outlandish to take seriously. Now, however, the desperation in the room made her words seem like a lifeline. "What are you talking about?" General William Adams asked, his brow furrowing in confusion. "We've been reverse engineering technology from the alien artifacts we've been studying." Dr. Harper continued, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "We've built a warship, a ship that can fight back, a ship unlike anything the Overlords have seen." The room went silent again, this time with skepticism hanging in the air. "A warship?" someone asked, incredulous. "We don't even have a space fleet." "We didn't have one," Dr. Harper responded, her tone unwavering. "But we've managed to build something using our own ingenuity. It's not just a warship. It's a statement. It's the culmination of everything humanity stands for: our determination to survive, to fight against impossible odds. And we'll need every resource we have to make it operational, but it's our only shot." President Matthews, despite the doubt in the room, gave a single nod. "Do it. We don't have time to waste. If humanity is going to survive this, we need that ship ready." And so, the clock started ticking. The global scientific community, military engineers, and even private companies scrambled to finish the warship. Construction sites were hastily established all over Earth, working day and night, with each piece of technology coming together in secret. The warship, named Victory's Wrath, was humanity's last hope. The ship was equipped with advanced shielding, energy weapons designed to rival the Overlord's own, and engines capable of matching the speed and agility of even the most formidable alien craft. The humans knew they had one chance to stop the overlords. Failure meant the destruction of Earth, and with it the end of their species. But as the clock counted down, something strange began to happen across the planet. And so, as the deadline for submission approached, humanity's warship was completed. In the dead of night, it launched from Earth's surface and soared into the cold expanse of space, its sleek design cutting through the atmosphere with the force of a comet. The overlords had no idea what they were about to face. As the Victory's wrath entered orbit, humanity's defiance was clear. The overlords had underestimated them. Now they would learn the true power of the human spirit. The battle for Earth had begun. The Victory's wrath hurtled through space, its engines roaring with power, cutting through the cold void of the cosmos. On board, the human crew, handpicked from the brightest minds and the most skilled soldiers, prepared for the unimaginable. They knew the odds were stacked against them. The Overlord's fleet was a vast, seemingly invincible force, and yet, here they were, humanity's only hope. They had built this ship from the ground up, piecing together technologies both alien and human, creating something far beyond the sum of its parts. But even with all the advancements, it was still just one ship, facing an empire of unfathomable power. Captain Riker stood at the helm, staring at the monitors that displayed Earth's distant silhouette. His jaw was set, his eyes sharp. He had led military operations before, but this was different. The weight of responsibility pressed down on him, but he held his resolve. "Status report," he called out, his voice calm despite the storm of uncertainty in his mind. "Engines are stable, Captain. Shielding is at full strength. Weapons are primed and ready," Lieutenant Mira Santos, the ship's tactical officer, reported. "We're on course to intercept the Overlord fleet within 3 hours." Riker nodded. It was as good as it could get. But there was still a sinking feeling in his gut. They had built Victory's wrath as the ultimate weapon, but even the best weapon in the galaxy couldn't guarantee victory. Not against the Overlords. In the ship's control room, engineers and scientists continued to monitor the ship's systems. The ship's hybrid engines, powered by a combination of human and alien technology, gave them unprecedented speed and maneuverability. Its armor, constructed from newly discovered metals scavenged from ancient alien ships, could withstand even the most powerful blasts. But the heart of the ship was its weapons. Energy cannons capable of vaporizing entire fleets, shield disruptors that could tear through even the most advanced alien shields, and close combat drones that could engage enemies in zero gravity. Despite all their preparation, the humans knew they couldn't rely solely on technology. The Overlords had an empire's worth of experience, cunning, and overwhelming force at their disposal. Humanity's greatest asset was not the ship, but the human spirit, the will to fight, to innovate, and to survive against all odds. They had been underestimated before, and they were determined to prove the Overlords wrong. In the ship's war room, a team of strategists worked tirelessly, devising unconventional tactics. They couldn't fight the Overlords head-on. Their fleet was simply too powerful. But they could use their greatest strength, adaptability. The humans had a knack for outsmarting their enemies, thinking outside the box in ways the Overlords simply couldn't comprehend. It was this, combined with their technological advancements, that gave them their edge. "Captain, we've got an incoming transmission from the Overlord fleet," Santos reported. Her voice was steady, but there was an edge to it. She knew what this meant. "Put it through," Riker ordered. The screen flickered and shifted, displaying the imposing form of the Overlord commander. His scales shimmered like polished gold, his eyes cold and dismissive. He looked down on the humans with contempt, as if their very existence was a slight to the grandeur of his species. "Humans," the Overlord commander's voice boomed. "You still refuse to submit. Your defiance is nothing more than a pathetic gesture. You will be crushed. Your planet will burn, and your species will be extinguished from the galaxy." Riker's gaze hardened. "We'll see about that," he said, his voice low but firm. The Overlord commander's lips curled into a sneer. "You are not worthy of our time. We will destroy you, just as we have done with countless others. Prepare for your end." With that, the transmission ended abruptly. The silence that followed was deafening. The crew of the Victory's Wrath stared at the screen for a long moment, knowing that the Overlords would waste no time in their attempt to annihilate humanity. Riker turned away from the screen and looked out the viewports at the vast emptiness of space. His thoughts raced. This was it, the moment of truth. There was no turning back now. "All hands, prepare for battle," he commanded, his voice resolute. The crew quickly sprang into action, activating their stations, running final checks on the ship's systems. The sound of footsteps and commands filled the air as the tension mounted. The Victory's Wrath was humanity's first, and perhaps only, chance to stand toe-to-toe with the Overlords. "Captain," Santos said, "we're picking up multiple Overlord ships on the radar. They're closing in fast." Riker's hand gripped the armrest of his seat as the ship's engines roared to life. "Engage evasive maneuvers. Take us in close. Let them think they have the advantage." The crew worked in perfect synchrony as the Victory's Wrath veered sharply to the side, dodging incoming fire. The Overlord's ships were massive, their weapons powerful enough to obliterate entire fleets in seconds. But the humans weren't about to give up without a fight. They had one chance to prove their worth. With the Overlord fleet rapidly approaching, Riker's voice rang out over the comms. "Let's show them what humanity is made of." The Victory's Wrath entered the heart of the battle, its engines pushing it forward with unstoppable momentum. The first blast from the Overlords hit their shields, sending a shockwave through the ship, but the human defenses held firm. This was just the beginning. Humanity had only one shot to make their mark on the galaxy, and they were going to make it count. The Victory's Wrath surged forward, narrowly avoiding another barrage of laser fire from the massive Overlord warships. The human ship's advanced shielding shimmered with each hit, but it held strong, resisting the overwhelming force of the enemy's weapons. Captain Riker's hands were steady on the controls, every fiber of his being focused on the moment at hand. It was no longer just about survival. It was about sending a message. Humanity wasn't going to bow to anyone, especially not to an alien empire that saw them as nothing more than insects to be crushed underfoot. "Shields holding at 85%, Captain," Lieutenant Santos reported, her voice calm but tinged with urgency. "They're getting aggressive. Another wave of fire incoming." "Bring us closer," Riker ordered, his voice sharp. "We need to close the distance. Get them in range of our primary weapons." The Victory's Wrath twisted and turned through the chaos of space, its sleek design making it a difficult target. The Overlords had assumed that humanity's fleet, if it existed, would be slow, cumbersome, and easy to defeat. But the Victory's Wrath was anything but. It was agile, unpredictable, and designed to exploit weaknesses in the Overlord's tactics. Their massive ships relied on overwhelming force, but they were sluggish, and their weapons, though powerful, were slower to fire than the human ship's faster, more precise energy blasts. "Targeting system locked onto the nearest Overlord vessel," Santos announced. "Ready to fire on your command, Captain." Riker's pulse quickened, but his voice remained steady. "Fire." The Victory's Wrath unleashed its first volley, sending a barrage of energy blasts streaking toward the Overlord ship. The enemy vessel erupted in a brilliant explosion, its shields unable to withstand the intensity of the human weaponry. The shockwave rippled outward, sending debris into the void of space. It was the first sign of victory in this fight. A single definitive blow delivered by a ship that had no business standing against the Overlords. The crew cheered, but Riker's focus never wavered. They had just destroyed one ship, but the Overlords had a fleet that outnumbered them at least 10-1. This was only the beginning. "They're regrouping," Santos warned. "They're adjusting their formations. Looks like they're going to try to encircle us." Riker didn't hesitate. "Change course. Now. We need to break through their line." The Victory's Wrath responded immediately, its engines flaring as it shot forward, diving through the gaps in the enemy formation. It was a daring maneuver, but it was the only way to avoid being overwhelmed by the sheer number of ships bearing down on them. The crew's coordination was flawless as they weaved between the enemy ships, firing off shots whenever they had a clear target. Riker's mind raced as he processed the movements of the enemy. The Overlord's fleet was trying to trap them, but their ship's massive size made them slow to adjust. They were used to enemies who didn't fight with agility and cunning, who didn't move with the speed and flexibility that humans had mastered. The Overlord commander, watching from his flagship, gritted his teeth in frustration. "These humans, they're not what we expected," he muttered under his breath. "Reinforce the flanks. We will not be outmaneuvered." Back aboard the Victory's Wrath Riker could sense the growing tension in the air. Their attacks had made a dent, but this wasn't the end. The Overlords were regrouping, and soon they would be back in force. But Riker's resolve remained unshaken. The ship was holding its ground, and every second they fought back was another second they bought for Earth's survival. "Captain," Santos called, her voice filled with urgency. "We've got multiple incoming ships targeting us from the rear." "Activate the rear shields," Riker ordered, his mind already racing through tactical possibilities. "Get ready to fire again. I want those ships disabled, not destroyed. We need to keep some of their fleet alive for interrogation." The Victory's Wrath adjusted its trajectory, now heading toward the encroaching ships. It was a high-risk move, but Riker knew they had to keep the pressure on. Their main objective wasn't to wipe out the Overlords immediately. It was to survive long enough to force them into a position where they had no choice but to reconsider. "Here they come," Santos said, her voice steady despite the rising tension. Riker waited for the perfect moment. The Overlord ships had grown overconfident in their numbers, assuming they would crush the human ship in an easy ambush, but they underestimated the human will. The Victory's Wrath was more than just a weapon. It was a symbol of humanity's resolve, a single ship against an empire, and they were not about to go down quietly. "Now," Riker commanded. The ship's cannons fired again, this time targeting the engines of the Overlord ships, crippling them without destroying them completely. Several ships spun out of control, drifting helplessly in space. The rest of the fleet hesitated, confused by the unrelenting assault. "Nice shot," Santos said, a rare smile tugging at her lips. Riker allowed himself a brief moment of satisfaction before turning back to the view ahead. The battle was far from over. But the humans had delivered their first blow, and it was one that would echo through the galaxy. The Overlords might have underestimated humanity, but that mistake would cost them dearly. "We're not done yet," Riker muttered to himself. "Let's make sure they know that." With that, the Victory's Wrath plunged deeper into the heart of the battle, ready to face whatever the Overlords threw at them. The moment of defiance had come, and humanity would fight until the end. The battle raged on in the cold expanse of space. The Victory's Wrath was a tiny spear of defiance amidst a storm of destruction. Each shot from the Overlord's massive ships was a cataclysmic force, shaking the very fabric of the human ship. But with every passing minute, the humans showed the galaxy that they were not to be underestimated. They maneuvered with precision, their tactics a brilliant mix of ingenuity and desperation. Captain Riker's grip tightened on the helm as the Overlord ships closed in, their firepower relentless. But there was a change in the air. For the first time, the Overlords were hesitant. They had expected an easy victory, an overwhelming assault that would obliterate the humans without effort. Instead, they found themselves facing a foe that refused to yield. "Captain, we've taken down 3 more ships," Santos reported, her voice filled with an edge of disbelief. Their fleet is scattering. They're trying to regroup, but it's chaos. Riker's eyes narrowed. We've made them nervous. Good. But they're still not defeated. We need to keep pushing hard. He turned to Lieutenant Santos. How's our energy reserves holding up? Power's stable for now, but we can't keep this up indefinitely, she replied. We've already taken some hits to our systems, but nothing critical yet. Good, Riker said, glancing at the monitors. The Overlords had sent more ships, but the formation was now erratic. They were trying to regroup, but the Victory's Wrath was forcing them into a disorganized retreat. The human ship's agility was its greatest asset, and it was paying off. The Overlords had no answer to the unpredictability of the human assault. Now's our chance, Riker said. Push us into the heart of their fleet. Let's cripple them before they can recover. Santos activated the command, and the Victory's Wrath shot forward once more, darting through the scattered remnants of the Overlord ships. The energy cannons on the ship's flanks unleashed another devastating volley, sending multiple Overlord warships into disarray. Their shields flickered and failed under the intensity of the human weapons. The Overlords responded with a barrage of their own, their weapons hitting the Victory's Wrath with bone-shattering force. The ship rocked violently, alarms blaring throughout the vessel. Riker held his ground, his voice steady. Report. We've taken some damage to the aft section. Shields are down to 50%. Santos replied, her voice strained, but nothing critical yet. Riker exhaled. They were holding together, but just barely. Keep pushing. We can't let them recover. The Overlord commander, watching the battle unfold from his flagship, seethed with rage. His ships were being outclassed by the human vessel, and it was a humiliation he could not abide. His species had dominated the galaxy for eons, and now, a single human ship was making a mockery of their power. We underestimated them, the Overlord commander growled. Regroup. We end this now. He issued orders for his fleet to converge on the Victory's Wrath hoping to overwhelm it with sheer force. But what he didn't know was that the humans had a surprise waiting for him. In the depths of the ship, Dr. Emily Harper, the scientist who had helped design the Victory's Wrath worked furiously at her console. She had one last card to play, an experimental weapon that had been in the final stages of development. It was a high-risk move, but desperate times called for desperate measures. Captain, Dr. Harper's voice crackled over the comms. We're ready for the final phase. If we deploy this weapon, it'll disable the Overlord fleet's central control systems. It's our best shot at turning the tide. But it will leave us vulnerable. Riker's mind raced as he considered the options. Vulnerable. They were already vulnerable, surrounded on all sides by a fleet that had outnumbered them. But if this worked, it could cripple the Overlord's ability to fight back. Do it, he said. Now, Dr. Harper initiated the sequence, and the Victory's Wrath activated the experimental weapon. A high-frequency pulse of energy emanated from the ship, rippling outward toward the Overlord fleet. The effect was immediate. The Overlord ships, once so coordinated in their attack, suddenly faltered. Their communication systems were jammed, and their central command structures began to fail. For the first time, the Overlords were completely blind to the battlefield. Their ships were still firing, but with no coordination or strategy. They were just launching random attacks, unable to adjust to the sudden chaos. Santos let out a breath of relief. It's working, Captain. Their ships are disoriented. They can't communicate. We've got them on the ropes. Riker's eyes flashed with determination. Keep the pressure on. They're not out yet. We finish this now. The Victory's Wrath launched into the fray once more, its cannons firing with deadly precision. The Overlords, caught in the disarray caused by the weapon, were easy targets now. One by one, their ships fell, disabled and crippled by the relentless assault. It was a victory that no one had believed possible, The Overlords, who had once believed themselves invincible, were now in full retreat. But the battle wasn't over yet. The Overlords still had a considerable fleet remaining, and the war was far from won. "We've made our mark," Riker said, his voice resolute. "But this is only the beginning. We need to finish what we started." The crew of the Victory's Wrath knew that the true test had only just begun. The Overlords might be reeling, but they would come back stronger. Humanity's defiance had shaken the foundations of the galaxy, and now the galaxy itself would have to reckon with Earth's place among the stars. The tide of the battle had shifted in humanity's favor, but Captain Riker knew that victory was not yet assured. The Overlords, stunned by the Victory's Wrath's unexpected effectiveness, had been forced into disarray. But their pride and arrogance were not easily broken, and Riker had no doubt that they would regroup. The question was, how long would they need to adapt, and how much time did humanity have before the Overlords launched their full counterattack? "Captain, the Overlord fleet is regrouping," Lieutenant Santos reported, her eyes scanning the rapidly changing tactical display. "They're pulling back, but I don't think this is over. Their remaining ships are adjusting their formations." Riker leaned forward in his seat, studying the shifting patterns on the holographic map. The Overlords weren't retreating. They were reorganizing for a decisive strike. They had learned from their earlier mistakes, and this time, they would come prepared. "Are we reading any new ship classes?" Riker asked, his voice steady but edged with concern. Santos hesitated for a moment, then answered grimly, "Yes. Several new ship signatures are coming in from the far side of their formation. They're smaller, faster, more agile. Looks like they're trying to overwhelm us with speed, not just firepower." Riker cursed under his breath. The Overlords were adapting far too quickly for his liking. They were now fighting a war of attrition, trying to whittle down humanity's last hope through overwhelming force. He needed a strategy, something that could put them on the offensive once again. "Prepare all systems for evasive maneuvers. We need to keep them guessing." "Have we got any intel on their new ship's capabilities?" Riker asked. Dr. Harper, who had been monitoring the developments from her science station, spoke up. "Their new ships are equipped with energy weapons that seem to be adapted from ours, something similar to the pulse weapon we used against them. It's likely a direct countermeasure to our advantage." Riker cursed again. If the Overlords had managed to reverse engineer humanity's technology so quickly, they could now exploit the weaknesses that had allowed the Victory's Wrath to succeed. They were getting desperate, and that made them dangerous. "Anything else?" Riker asked, his mind working furiously. Harper's eyes narrowed as she analyzed the data. "Yes, there's one more thing. These new ships are designed for hit-and-run tactics. Fast, precise strikes. If we don't act quickly, they'll wear us down over time. We can't afford a prolonged engagement." Riker's decision was made in an instant. "We have one chance to end this, and it won't be in a drawn-out battle. We need to go straight to their command ship. If we can take it out, their fleet will fall apart." Santos nodded. "Agreed. But that's going to be tricky. The Overlords are going to expect us to make a direct push. They'll have their fleet locked down tight around their flagship." Riker exhaled slowly, weighing the options. He glanced at the tactical screen, then turned back to the crew. "We don't have the luxury of subtlety. We go for their flagship, and we go hard. We'll use their tactics against them. Strike fast, hit hard, and leave before they can react." He looked directly at Santos. "Prepare the fighters. We'll use the full complement. Launch them as soon as we make the move." Santos nodded, her fingers already moving over the console to initiate the launch sequence for the ship's fleet of smaller, faster combat craft. The Victory's Wrath may have been the key to humanity's survival, but the small fleet of fighter ships would be their best chance to penetrate the Overlord defenses. "Harper," Riker said, his voice firm, "can we increase the power to the engines? We'll need to close the distance before their fleet can respond." Harper's eyes flicked over the console as she manipulated the controls. I can give you an additional 10% speed boost, but it'll drain the reserve power. After that, we'll be running on fumes." "Do it," Riker ordered. "We need to break their formation and hit them hard before they can react." The ship's engines roared as they powered up, surging forward with even greater speed. The Victory's Wrath and its complement of fighters darted forward, using the chaos of the Overlord fleet's regrouping as their cover. Santos glanced at Riker. "We're going to be in their range in 10 minutes. They're already adjusting their formations. We'll be the primary target." Riker's eyes flickered over the enemy fleet. "Not if we're too fast for them. Once we breach their line, I want a full-on assault on their flagship. We break through, hit them where it hurts, and then get out before they can respond." Santos nodded. "A bold move, Captain. But it's our only shot." Riker gave a small, tight smile. "That's why I'm still in the game." As the Victory's Wrath raced toward the heart of the Overlord fleet, the crew braced themselves. The next few minutes would determine everything. Humanity's first true victory was still in reach, but it would require their most audacious maneuver yet. The Overlords had been caught off guard before, but they wouldn't make the same mistake twice. The humans, however, had one advantage they didn't: the willingness to take risks, to gamble everything for a chance at survival. The Overlord's flagship loomed ahead, its enormous hull gleaming in the cold light of distant stars. Riker's heart pounded as the crew prepared for the strike. It was now or never. "On my mark," Riker said, his voice a low whisper. "Let's make this count." The Victory's Wrath surged forward, its engines roaring with power as it sliced through the black void of space. The Overlord flagship was now visible, a massive fortress of metal and energy, bristling with weapons and defenses. Around it, the remaining Overlord ships formed a dense web of protection, ready to strike at the slightest movement. But humanity's final gambit was already in motion. Too fast, too sudden, for the Overlords to react in time. Riker's eyes locked onto the view screen, the image of the enemy flagship growing larger with every passing second. They were mere minutes away from striking. The Victory's Wrath was now at maximum speed, powered by every ounce of the reserve energy the crew could muster. "Captain," Santos said, her voice tight with anticipation, "we're in range of their outer defenses. I'm initiating a decoy program to scramble their sensors." "Do it," Riker commanded, his focus unwavering. "Then prepare the main assault. We don't stop until that flagship is in ruins." Santos worked quickly, her fingers flying across the console as she deployed a swarm of false signals and digital chaff. The Victory's Wrath unleashed a series of decoy pulses, creating an illusion of multiple targets. The Overlord's sensors briefly flickered, confused by the sudden influx of conflicting signals. It wasn't enough to disable them, but it was just enough to cause hesitation. Decoys deployed. The Overlords are responding, trying to lock onto our position. Santos reported, a hint of excitement creeping into her voice. "They're slower than I expected." Riker nodded. "Good. Keep them guessing. We'll make our move while they're distracted." The Victory's Wrath continued its relentless approach, now within striking distance of the Overlord flagship's outer defenses. The ship's fighters, dozens of sleek and nimble craft, shot ahead like arrows fired from a bow, splitting into two groups to assault the flanks of the flagship. "Fighter squadrons are away. They're in position, Captain," Santos said, her fingers tightening on the controls. "It's now or never." Riker's pulse raced. The battle had reached its crescendo. The moment they'd trained for, planned for, had arrived. They had to break through the Overlord's outer shields and get to the heart of the flagship. It was a 1-in-a-million shot, but it was humanity's only chance. "Target their primary shield generators," Riker ordered. "Once we breach, all fighters will focus on their engine core. We disable them, and the fleet collapses." The Victory's Wrath fired its first salvo, sending a volley of high-energy beams streaking across the void. The beams slammed into the Overlord flagship's shields, causing them to flare in response, but they held firm. Riker gritted his teeth, not slowing down for a second. "Keep the pressure on them," he barked. "We can't afford to give them time to regroup." The fighters launched their own attacks, striking at vulnerable points along the flagship's hull. Missiles streaked through space, detonating with explosive force, while energy pulses flared as the fighters cut through the Overlord's outer defenses. Despite their efforts, the flagship's shields remained strong, its vast power seemingly unshakable. "Shields still holding strong, Captain," Santos said, frustration creeping into her tone. "We need more power to break through." Riker's eyes flashed with urgency. "We don't have more time. Harper, can we overload the energy cannons? Make them punch through the shields." Harper's voice crackled through the comms. "We can try, Captain, but it's risky. We'd need to push the systems to their limits. Overload could cause a cascading failure. We'd be left with nothing." Riker's jaw clenched. There was no other choice. "Do it. We don't have a backup plan." Harper hesitated for a brief moment, then responded with determination. "Understood. Overloading energy cannons now. Brace yourselves." A sudden, thunderous hum filled the ship as the energy levels in the cannons spiked. The ship's systems groaned under the strain, but it held together. The Victory's wrath was a masterpiece of engineering, and humanity's finest hour was riding on it. Firing in 3, 2, 1. Now. The Victory's wrath unleashed its full might, a colossal surge of concentrated energy blasting from its cannons. The shockwave tore through space like a rift in the fabric of reality itself, striking the Overlord flagship with an unimaginable force. The first shot collided with the flagship's shields, and for a brief moment, it seemed like they would hold. But then, with a violent crack, the shield collapsed, and the full brunt of the attack slammed into the ship's hull. A massive explosion rocked the flagship as the energy from the cannon blasted through its outer layers. The shockwave rippled outward, throwing enemy ships into disarray. The Victory's Wrath's attack had done the impossible. It had pierced the heart of the Overlord flagship. The flagship staggered under the blow, its massive engines flaring erratically. But even as its systems began to fail, the Overlord's response was swift. A final retaliation volley of fire came streaking toward the Victory's Wrath, but the human ship was already in motion, weaving and dodging with its agile maneuverability. The Victory's Wrath turned sharply to avoid the barrage, its shields flaring once more, but holding firm. "We've got them on the ropes," Santos said, her voice charged with triumph. Riker stood tall, his heart pounding as the Overlord flagship began to break apart. The crew's cheers erupted across the bridge, but Riker's mind was already focused on the next step. They couldn't afford to let up now, not until the Overlord fleet had been completely neutralized. "Finish them," Riker commanded. "Every remaining ship in that fleet must be disabled. We take no chances." The final phase of the battle had begun. With the Overlord flagship crippled, the rest of their fleet was in disarray. Now was the time for humanity to finish what they had started. The galaxy would remember this day, the day humanity had defied the impossible and struck down the Overlord Empire. The Victory's Wrath hovered in the void, surrounded by the smoldering remains of the Overlord fleet. The flagship, once a symbol of their power, was now a fractured shell, its massive form breaking apart in the cold vacuum of space. Debris floated around it like shattered glass, each piece a testament to humanity's defiance. Captain Riker stood on the bridge, staring at the destruction with a sense of grim satisfaction. They had done it. The impossible had been achieved. But even as the cheers echoed across the ship, a weight settled in Riker's chest. This victory, while monumental, was not the end of the war. The Overlords were reeling, but they were not broken. Their empire was vast, their resources nearly limitless. This battle might have crippled them, but the galaxy was still a dangerous place, and humanity's enemies were far from finished. "Captain, we've neutralized the last of their ships," Santos reported, her voice filled with both relief and caution. "The Overlord fleet is in complete disarray. Their remaining vessels are retreating or disabled. We've won, Captain. The field is ours. Riker nodded slowly, his gaze never leaving the screen. For now, he muttered under his breath. Dr. Harper, standing at her station, glanced up. We've sent out a distress signal to Earth, Captain. They'll know we've survived. And won. Riker gave a brief nod, but the thought of Earth was bittersweet. Yes, they had won. But the war wasn't just about a single battle. It was about survival, about proving to the galaxy that humanity was not just a fleeting spark of existence. Humanity had the will to endure, to fight, and to rise above its challengers. And though the overlords had been pushed back, Riker knew that others would come. There would be more battles, more bloodshed. They would need to be ready. Any word from our fighters? Riker asked, pushing his thoughts back to the present. He needed to stay focused. All squadrons have reported in, Santos replied. Some losses, but nothing we can't handle. The fighters did exactly what we needed them to do, targeting their vulnerable points while we made our push for the flagship. Good, Riker said, his voice steady. Tell them I'm proud of them. But keep alert. This victory has drawn the attention of the entire galaxy, and we can't afford to let our guard down. Santos nodded. Understood, Captain. The comms chimed, and Riker's eyes turned to the message from Earth. It was a short but powerful transmission. The High Command had already recognized the gravity of the situation and the success of the victory's wrath. Earth's military leaders were preparing to bolster their defenses in the aftermath of the battle. But the message was clear. Humanity was no longer seen as a fledgling race in the galaxy. They had proven themselves. We did it, Santos said, turning to Riker with a rare smile. We took down the overlords. We really did. Riker allowed himself a brief smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. This battle, yes. But the war? That's still ahead of us. As the victory's wrath drifted in the aftermath of the battle, the crew took a collective breath. Their victory had been hard-won, and though they had taken down the Overlord fleet, the cost of their success was still weighing heavily on them. Each crew member, whether they had fought in the skies or worked behind the scenes, understood that this victory was the result of teamwork, sacrifice, and an unwavering belief that humanity was worth saving. Riker walked to the observation window, staring out at the destruction that marked the end of this battle. The remains of the Overlord ships scattered across the stars were a symbol of humanity's resilience, but it was also a reminder of what was at stake. The war was not over. The victory's wrath had struck a blow to the Overlord Empire, but that empire was far-reaching, and its enemies would not be content with this defeat. We've opened the door, Riker muttered to himself, but the galaxy's not going to let us walk through it without a fight. The bridge fell silent as the crew contemplated their next move. The victory's wrath was battered but still operational. The ship's systems were running at reduced capacity, but the crew had proven time and time again that they could push through anything. They had broken the Overlord's grip on this sector, but the war was far from over. They would rebuild, and they would be ready for whatever came next. A voice broke the silence. Captain, Dr. Harper said, looking at the console. There's something else. A new fleet signature. It's not Overlord, but it's coming fast. Riker turned sharply, his instincts kicking into high gear. From where? Harper's fingers moved quickly across the console, tracking the incoming signal. It's a massive fleet. It's almost as if they've been waiting for us. Riker felt the tension surge through him. The galaxy had just learned of humanity's strength. And now, the true challenge was just beginning. Plot a course, Riker said, his voice cold with resolve. We're going to meet them head-on. The crew prepared for what came next, knowing that they had taken down one enemy. But the battle for humanity's future was only beginning. Set course for the new fleet, Riker ordered. We're not done yet.